Hello, my nomies! This week's car review is the 2016 Mazda 6, which I've never driven before until this week. And I've had it for a few days now, and initially, I wasn't sure what to expect because I've never really driven a Mazda car before, at least that I can remember. And I think I'd remember. This is the whole zoom kind of car, and I know that because it's on the back around the license plate. That's really how I picked up on the whole zoom thing. I don't really watch car reviews. I don't really do car reviews, but I am reviewing a car from my perspective as a general user's experience, and that's exactly what I was looking for. When they drop off the car for me to review, because I'm going to be doing this on a regular basis, they ask me on a scale from 1 to 10, how would I rate the car? And I wasn't really sure what to make of the car initially, so I'm going to do this like I've done my other car reviews. Upon looking at it, I thought, long car is long. This is a very long car, but I guess it's a mid-size car. Definitely not compact at all. It was just long. I was a little worried in getting into the car, thinking I might have issues in turning or in parking because I've been used to driving compact cars. But that was my initial reaction. Wow, it's a long car. And I really like the color. I guess it's some derivation of titanium. Titanium's a fun color, at least as far as I'm concerned. I thought the design initially, and I guess ongoing as well, was rather classy. Not just externally, it looks like a nice car, a very nice car. Like if I were to drive this on a regular basis, people would be impressed, I think, with the design of the car. Interior seems to be just as well designed. I kind of like the various colors or two-tone colors inside here. It's been, I would say, out of all the cars I've ever driven, whether I've reviewed them or not, probably one of the more classy cars, if I can describe the car that way, and I'm going to. Initially, and I wasn't sure how to take this because it was before I turned it on, it looked like a mix between old and new, and that actually kind of gets described a little further as I move through the review, but my initial impression turned out to be the absolute impression, and I will explain in at least 3 examples in this car how it bridges the gap between old and new, modern and vintage, whatever words people use to describe older cars or newer cars. It's a mix between old and new. Huge trunk space, gigantic. Like, I know I could fit in there easily with 2 or 3 other people. Okay, maybe that's a stretch, depending on how big those people are. But I'm a small guy. I understand why the car is long, not just to accommodate the engine, but also the trunk space. Someone asked if there was legroom, because I watch your comments when you post them to social as responses to either my regular vlogs that I do in the Pirillo Vlogs channel, featuring the cars that I'm driving on almost a weekly basis, but also the photos that I might take of the cars when I first get them to review. Someone asked how the legroom was in the back seat, and we actually tested it. It's ample. I don't have a problem. Just looking at it, I could say, yeah, it looks fine. But someone got into the back seat, and we tested it with someone basically pushing this seat, the front seat, back on the passenger side, and it was fine. So ample legroom, I thought. Not compact, not full size, from my understanding, but it really kind of surprised me. It never really occurred to me to ever look into driving a Mazda vehicle, and I'm kind of taken aback with how much it surprised me, especially in my first drive. This car is teched out. I wrote that down. It is teched out in all the right ways. The built-in nav, to the heads-up display, to all the safety features, which I'll dive into, the controls, everything in this vehicle just screamed tech to me, and tech in the right places. And I don't just mean in terms of drivability, because it drove well. It was a very smooth ride. It was a very quiet ride. I had no issues with that whatsoever. But everywhere I turned, there was a little bit of technology that, you know, made me happy. It really genuinely did. The heads-up display was awesome. The radar cruise control is something that I believe is an essential feature, so Mazda gets an extra point from me just for having that feature. Once you live with that, it's impossible to live without that feature, and it worked out very, very well. It was easy to use. The radar cruise control, it's like an adaptive cruise control. You set it, and then it'll automatically adjust the speed depending on how far a vehicle is in front of you. The seat has something that I know my wife Diana liked, and that is memory between 1 or 2 drivers. So this, I'm going to kind of springboard into, I don't know if compromise is the right word, to use, but the idea of describing old versus new, in a lot of cars, you have one seat setting and the other person has to adjust it. And without memory, it's very difficult for two drivers to drive that one car. That's one, I think, example of a balance. Another example of balance is the fact that I have a speedometer that's analog, so that satisfies the people who like analog gauges, but the heads-up display also displays the speed. And I will be honest with you, the heads-up display I used all the time. I never, ever looked at the analog speedometer. Ever, because it was right there. The heads-up display was right there. I couldn't figure out how to adjust the heads-up display to better allow for viewability of the speed, but I always use that heads-up display. So there you have analog and digital. The nav system surprised me because I had a knob, or I guess have one, down here that you can twist back and forth, and you can navigate the nav system by using that knob as like a little joystick as well. It moves right and left and up and down. But you can also use it as a touch screen. So there again is an example of compromise or a balance between old and new in terms of navigation. Another example would be something that I never really used, but it means something for people who really care about performance. You have the manual paddle control to be able to shift gears, or automatic. You have a choice. Between all of these things, you're given a choice. So to me, this gets closer to who I believe this car is ideal for. And I'll get to that, further on in this review, because that's really kind of the pinnacle of my review or my take on this particular car. Seat warmers, nice to have. Not really a fan of those except for wintertime. The responsive nav system was very, very friendly. The speed limit was integrated. It would turn red. The speed limit sign on the nav system would turn red if you were going over the speed limit. Very helpful to actually see that play out. You could scroll up and down. It was a little janky, but all nav systems are, I think, as far as nav systems go. It was ample. I wouldn't give it an A. I'd say I'd give it a B in terms of nav system and software and what it would be able to do. It reminded me, surprisingly enough, this goes back to the idea that it's teched out. It reminded me to connect my Bluetooth device. It says, hey, you haven't connected a phone yet. Do you want to connect a phone? And it was super, super simple. Click, 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 click. Done. The sound sounded clean. We've got Bose speakers, at least in the front, I assume throughout the rest of the car. I'm not really someone who, cranks it up and jams out to tunes. I'm not that kind of person. If I do, it's usually a podcast, and, how good does the sound system need to be for talking type of audio. The pickup or the acceleration was rather quick. You didn't have to touch the pedal too hard to, you were gone. And that was in full-on automatic mode. I never use manual controls. I don't want to shift gears ever for the rest of my life. So the fact that it had enough oomph, was really, really nice, especially on the hills here in the Seattle area. That was not an issue at all. I never felt like, and I don't think I needed to change lanes to get around someone. Like, that would be a challenge. So it had great acceleration, and it drove very, very smoothly. The controls, I thought, were everything I would want a control in a car to be. The steering column could be adjusted and maneuvered. Steering was smooth. It was easy, not too loose. I was comfortable in the seat near immediately. It didn't take much getting used to. It took maybe 15 minutes, and I felt like I was driving, quote-unquote, my car. It was easy to scan for valuable information, including current MPG, and this was something that shows up in one of the, the gauges. It looks like, and I didn't get a confirmation on this, it looks like it's an e-ink display showing you how much gas you have left, but it also shows you current MPG. This is also something that you get on the nav in terms of a readout. It'll show you efficiency of how well you're driving in your average MPG. So it was easy to scan for that kind of information instantaneously, and you didn't need to jump through some series of esoteric menus. It was relatively easy to find exactly what would be valuable for me as a driver. I believe it accommodates a variety of drivers. It really, it's going to be difficult for me to say who this car is not for, because, again, you have so many choices in this one vehicle. It is insane how many choices you have, and that's not something that I've experienced in any other car, at least in a pronounced fashion. So some of the other features that I picked up on as, I drove more and more, I picked up on the fact that every seat has its own handle. That's kind of nice. We've got the what I'm going to call the roof window, which is kind of nice. You have a sunglasses holder up here. You have integrated controls to manipulate any kind of garage doors. That's integrated on the rear view mirror. Now, speaking of mirrors, this is where the teched out features of this car really kind of blew me away. I never had a feature like the blind spot feature that's integrated within the side mirrors, but it happens as you're driving along and someone's in your blind spot. Even if you're not getting ready to come over, it will illuminate like an amber LED showing you, hey, there's a car next to you, don't try to get over. But then, let's just say for argument's sake, because this has happened too, I know I'm safe, but maybe I'm driving on a side street and it recognizes a car. If I turn my turn signal on in the direction where it believes there's something there and I gotta watch out, it will beep a warning. So it keeps you from causing harm. That is a huge safety feature. Not just the integration within the rear view mirrors, but specifically that turn signal, the warning. I couldn't figure out what was going on the first time because I was turning left at a light where it's a dual lane left turn, and it had recognized there were vehicles next to me. It was fine, but I couldn't figure out what was going on. That was a great safety feature, an amazing safety feature. It also has lane keep assist, and if you toggle a feature, because it's easily on off, there's buttons to the left of the steering wheel, you toggle it on and off, it will let you know whether you're about to drift off. It'll make like a sound, like, you know, usually when you go hit the side of the road, bump, 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 the bumps, if they're there, this will warn you, assuming that there's a line there that it can pick up on. Power windows, of course, power locks, power mirrors, power everything, dual climate controls. This was a car that if I was in the market to buy a car or lease a car, would easily be in my top 5. No doubt about it. I'd never even considered it before. This was a really, really good experience. Very little compromise as far as I'm concerned. Who is this for? I believe this is for a 2-person family or more. We had no problem with the child seat for Jedi in the back seat. It accommodated it more tightly than I had been able to accommodate it in other vehicles. It's someone who might be looking for not luxury, but a little more tech than average without being overwhelmed by it, and having that tech very, very accessible. It was exceedingly accessible, and that's very usable. This would be a car for someone who's looking for a nicer design. They want to, you know, move a little beyond the idea of every car looks the same. It really doesn't look like any other car I've driven, but then again, showing my lack of love for cars. I love what cars do. I don't love what cars are. So I could look at a vehicle and say, yeah, it looks nice, but a lot of them look the same to me. This one looks different. If you're just looking to get from point A to point B like I am, and you don't need any amount of help, you don't want an integrated nav system, you don't need the extra safety features, which I can't imagine someone being out there, this might be a little much for you. But I don't think it's much at all. I mean, like, this is like, to me, as far as I'm concerned, the stuff in this car ought to be standard. Forget tech packages. This is standard in terms of the types of features that are integrated. They've taken what we use on a regular basis and made it easier and more accessible, and I think that's just thrilling. Sorry, getting back to who this is not for. If you're the type of person who doesn't need both worlds of, you know, manual and automatic, if you don't need both analog and digital, if you don't need to adjust seat controls or settings between two people, if you're not looking for both worlds, this is probably not for you. You know, it's really something that has provided a compromise without compromise. This is another one of those vehicles that I'm reviewing that I'm going to be very disappointed to let go of. Mazda did an amazing job with this. There was very little not to like about the car. If anything, what I didn't like about the car, the gas efficiency or economy. It wasn't a gas guzzler. I'm not going to go that far, but I would have appreciated if they would have taken the extra step to make it more efficient. They've given you the right tools, but I do wish that it had, on average, better MPG, and it didn't. So I would if I had to slag the vehicle. If you had to say, well, what was the one thing you didn't like? You know, I would have appreciated more economy. But then again, I'm used to driving hybrids or electric vehicles and, you know, more economical cars. This would be one that I would consider driving on a regular basis, certainly in the Pirillo vlogs. Thank you for listening. Thanks for all your kind feedback and attention. Thank you for understanding I'm not a car guy. I'm just a driver who talks about certain things and my experiences. I'm a adult. I appreciate you. I appreciate these experiences and being able to share them with you. But at this point, I'm going to leave you to your own devices.